And it's always the husband slash partner slash boyfriend, right? Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime! Crue Trime! Crue Trime! If you are new here, hello. My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup while I do it. So if that sounds like fun to you, you're in the right place. So make sure you subscribe, do all the YouTubey things, and then that way you'll never miss one. Okay, so this story literally made my jaw drop when I heard it. I was like, so the woman in this case that suffered this terrible tragedy, she just kept going and going.
Do it, lady.
Like, ma'am. But we're gonna get right into it, okay? This is the story of Nicole Lenway. April 20th, 2022 was just a normal day in Minneapolis, Minnesota. 33-year-old Nicki Lenway had worked the overnight shift the night before. She was actually a forensic scientist with the Minneapolis Police Department. Like an actual crime scientist, like a CSI agent. Well, she had just picked up her 5-year-old son, Callahan, from school, and then she was taking him for his regularly scheduled visit with his father, Tim. They were on like a supervised visitation plan. So while Tim and Callahan would have their scheduled visit at the Family Wise Center on Bloomington Avenue in Minneapolis, Nicki would normally, just go run errands, do stuff that was easier to do when she didn't have a kid with her, like go to the bank, grocery shopping, that sort of thing. Well, as the visit was coming to a close around like 7 o'clock or so, Nicki returned from her errands and she got out of her car to walk across the parking lot into the Family Wise building, as she had done many times before. But this time, before she could get inside, a person in head-to-toe black clothes ran up behind her and opened fire. Nicki fell to the ground, and the attacker stood over her and fired more bullets into her body. One of those bullets actually went through her wrist and into her upper torso, lodging between two ribs. This actually perforated one of her lungs, like collapsing it, made it very difficult for her to breathe, obviously. She had also been shot in the neck. It severely injured her vocal cords, and it made her voice like this gurgling, awful sounding mess. But somehow, Nicki maintained consciousness the entire time. She had her cell phone, she called 911 for help, but she lost her ability to speak. The dispatcher quickly realized that she couldn't speak, and Nicki said that as much as she could, that she didn't recognize the person who did this to her. They were dressed all in black, they had a hood pulled up, they were wearing a mask. It was like peak COVID times. There was really no real way to know who the shooter was, but Nicki could kind of tell from their build of their body and their gait that it was a woman. About the same time that this attack was happening, a woman named Emily Clancy was driving by. She saw the whole thing. Emily would later become a key witness in solving this case. She actually was driving her car and she saw this woman, Nicki, on the ground. She pulled over, asked her if she was okay. Obviously, she was not.
Don't get me started.
Emily very bravely pulled her car over and got Nicki into her car with her, keeping her calm until the ambulance could arrive. And I gotta say, Nicki is built out of tungsten or whatever NASA uses to build space shuttles. So strong. So first responders arrived pretty quickly. Nicki was, of course, in a lot of pain and was having a hard time breathing, but she was holding it together, figuratively and literally, holding her throat. God. When you see this footage of her, you don't see a whole lot of blood, thankfully. But that's because the majority of it was somehow pooling inside her body. Also, most incredibly, Nicki was still aware, still on her feet at this point. In fact, she walked to the ambulance from Emily's car. She sat her own body on the gurney before it was loaded into the ambulance when she finally lost consciousness. So Nicki's boyfriend, Donovan Ford, a local Minneapolis cop, arrived at the emergency room. They told him that Nicki was in bad shape, critical condition, and he knew what that meant. But they would do their very best, of course, to save her life. Nicki had perforated lungs, severe damage to her vocal cords, and a bullet lodged in her chest. The fact that she wasn't already dead was like a miracle. So when the investigators got on the scene, Nicki's colleagues, they were looking around. They found some spent bullet casings on the ground and blood on the sidewalk. So Nicki's son was inside visiting with his father, Tim Amacher. She dropped him off earlier, and the police actually went inside to speak with Tim. He was finishing up the visit with his son with kind of no idea what was going on outside on the sidewalk. Tim seemed to be sincerely concerned about Nicki, the mother of his child. He was also fully aware that he would be the prime suspect. I mean, he had a connection to Nicki, maybe it was not the best history in their relationship, a custody situation with their kid, and it's always the husband / partner / boyfriend, right?
Hello?
Anyway, so Tim relayed to the police that Nicki told him that she had been fearful lately because of a case that she had been working on. She was afraid that she was being followed. Stuff like that. Weird cars were driving slow past her house. She shut down her social media. She started using a different last name. She just kind of did whatever she could to lower her profile, Tim was pretty cooperative. He spoke to the police, answered whatever their questions were. They wanted to know about his vehicles. These are standard questions, right? They even took a quick look inside the vehicle that he drove there. It was a Jeep Wrangler. And they verified if he had any other vehicles. He said, yes, I have another car, a Dodge Challenger, but I didn't drive it today. And that was that. And Tim went on his way. Police got busy trying to figure out who did this, what happened, and they gathered up all of the security footage in the area surrounding where Nicki had been attacked, hoping to find more clues. Maybe they have a clear picture of the person who did this, or a vehicle speeding away with a license plate, stuff like that. Of course, they found a ton. They pretty much had the entire attack and footage of the person dressed all in black getting into a black Dodge Ram pickup truck and driving away. Although the truck's windows were pretty heavily tinted, so you couldn't see inside. And it looked like the license plates had been removed or obscured somehow. So there was kind of no other way to identify who owned this vehicle. Back at the hospital, Nicki made it through the night and she woke up the next morning ready to talk to the police, via notepad because she couldn't speak. And again, she said that she didn't see for sure who shot her, but something told her that it had something to do with her ex, Tim. So, who the F is Tim? I'm glad you asked. Tim Amacher was a very successful business owner operating a gym / taekwondo studio in town called World Taekwondo Academy. Tim and Nicki met when she was a patron at this gym, and it didn't take long before Tim noticed her and they started dating. Nicki is beautiful, smart, she's a catch. And Tim was very handsome, very charismatic, and this was just a power couple waiting to happen. Tim was pretty persistent and Nicki was attracted to a lot of things about him. So in early 2014, after dating for a while, they actually moved in together. They had a lot of fun at first, but what Nicki didn't really realize was that Tim was kind of a fuckboy.
I got no idea what that means. I have no clue whatsoever.
He was very successful in business, yes, but he was also very successful in nightlife and the ladies, you know what I'm saying? He kept a revolving door of beautiful women in and out of his house. And though he was laying on the charm with Nicki, his womanizing ways weren't really changing. So their relationship was not super great. They fought a lot. They were hot and heavy in the bedroom, but there was lots of jealousy and controlling behavior, very typical projection. Tim would essentially accuse Nicki of all the things that he was doing. And most importantly, Tim got a little handsy when things would get heated between them. Physically abusive. Push her down, slap her around. It's just not good. So after a year or so of this crap, Nicki was really ready to move on. They had had one too many fights that crossed the line in multiple ways, and Nicki packed up and moved out. And this was around the same time that one of Tim's students, 18-year-old Colleen Larson, moved in to his house to rent one of the spare bedrooms. Colleen had actually been a student of Tim's for years at that point, since she was 12, 13 years old. And at the gym, Tim was very much in charge. He was Master Amacher, authority figure. A few months after Nicki moved out and broke up with Tim, the universe threw a curveball. She was pregnant. Now, Nicki knew for sure that she wanted to keep the baby, but she was absolutely panicked at the idea of co-parenting with somebody like Tim. The baby, a boy that they named Callahan, was born on June 20th, 2016. Nicki and Tim settled into a decent co-parenting routine, but Tim wasn't always super reliable. He was more focused on himself than anyone else or anything else, so that was par for the course. And to absolutely no one's surprise, the roommate that he had had for the past year, this teenager, Colleen, became his live-in girlfriend. And this is where it gets a little more than weird. So Colleen had been a student since she was a tween. Her and Tim were dating, but she still called him Master Amacher. Even after they're dating, what? Ew.
Ew, no, David.
Their relationship was just very imbalanced. She was essentially like a servant to him, which for Tim was awesome, of course. This poor young simpleton, Colleen, she was very much in an abusive situation, but didn't realize it. She was so dazzled with Master Amacher. He could have taken a fucking shit on the floor and she would have been like, oh my God. Well, in the summer of 2017, Nicki met somebody new. A Minneapolis police officer named Donovan Ford. Donovan was great. Nicki had finally found the right guy. He was steady, mature, great with her son, and so good to her. Tim hated him, of course. Not that it was any of his effing business who Nicki was dating, but, he was around their son, so whatever. But as Nicki and Donovan grew closer, Tim grew more and more volatile and abusive. Never mind that he had a live-in girlfriend. He wouldn't allow anybody to take his place as Callahan's father and Nicole's love interest. They weren't together. Blows my mind. Anyways, he began manipulating visitation dates, to try to control Nicki. Anything to just hurt her. And when that didn't work out for him, he started, escalating the behavior. He would call CPS and make reports that Nicki and Donovan were being abusive to the child, physically and sexually.
Stop it.
None of it was true, obviously. It's just the guy was a total egomaniac and a control freak narcissist. He was essentially stalking and harassing Nicki. And for the next 3 years, CPS workers and other police officers, Nicki's colleagues, Donovan's colleagues, would be in and out of her house over a dozen times to inspect or monitor these phantom abuses. Tim actually filed for sole physical and legal custody of the child, and he also made multiple allegations. It escalated to Tim filing charges against Nicki for an alleged assault where he claimed that she ran over his foot with a car. Not true, obviously, and she was cleared of all the charges, but Tim just kept going, doing whatever he could to humiliate, terrorize, and just hurt Nicki. So after a trial jury actually awarded Nicki sole legal and physical custody of Callahan in the fall of 2020, Tim lost his ever-loving mind. The jury essentially sniffed him out. They knew that they were dealing with a manipulator and they weren't having it. Tim was actually awarded 1-hour supervised visits per week, a true humiliation in his mind. And that pretty much leads us back to the beginning, with Nicki coming to Family Wise, which is the location where Callahan would visit with Tim. Nicki was attacked and shot outside, and now the police are inside talking to Tim. Now, remember I said that the police were asking Tim questions about his vehicles, and he said that he owned this Jeep Wrangler and this Dodge Challenger. True, yes, but he also had a third vehicle that he conveniently did not tell them about. Guess what kind of vehicle it was? A black Dodge Ram pickup truck. Kind of exactly the same as the truck that the police later would see on this surveillance footage of this attacker driving away after having shot Nicki. So police did call Tim back in for another interview, and they showed him pictures of this black Dodge Ram pickup truck that was seen nearby when Nicki was shot, and Tim examined the photos and declared, "Oh, that's not my truck. My truck," you know, the one that I just forgot to tell you about before, has Superman decals on it. Of course it does. Gross. But this truck in the pictures didn't have these Superman decals. To me, that's a very specific and funny detail to zero in on so specifically for a picture from like a surveillance, like a still from a video. Also, you know, he had an alibi. He was inside this family visitation center, so like how could he have been the one driving the truck when he was inside with Callahan? Am I right? Yeah. Tracking, got that, but like, is there anyone else in your life who might have had access to this truck? You know, your girlfriend? Well, Tim scoffed. That's a scoff. There's no way that Colleen could be involved. She couldn't hurt anyone. She wasn't capable of such a thing. I mean, she had been studying Taekwondo for years and years at this point and was, you know, probably a very capable fighter, but I don't know. Anyways, so the investigators continued sniffing around and they dug into Tim's truck, this black Dodge Ram, and they discovered that it had Wi-Fi. Well, anything with Wi-Fi or like cell phone signals, anything like that leaves a digital trail. Like you can literally track it. Exposed. And they did. They very easily tracked that truck to the exact area of the attack, to the exact area of the video surveillance that Tim swore was not his. Also, footage of that truck without that Superman decal was seen hours before the shooting in the drive-thru of a KFC restaurant with guess who driving? Tim! It all just proves that Tim was aware of the appearance of the truck, and the truck's appearance had been altered after the shooting to, you know, try to conceal it. Like, the decals were added after the shooting, right, to support this weirdly specific alibi. It was not long before 24-year-old Colleen Larson and Tim Amacher were both arrested. So when Colleen was questioned by police, she folded like laundry, immediately told them everything, confessed to all the details of the shooting, that it was directed by her boyfriend, Tim Amacher. She said that she believed Tim when he told her that Nicki was abusing this child, and they had planned out this entire attack like a week or two before. Tim told her which gun to use. Tim told her to wear all black. Tim told her which vehicle to drive. Everything was meant to benefit Tim and to get him custody of this child from the evil Nicki. Tim doubled down and continued to deny any involvement. Natch. When the case finally made it to trial, Tim doubled down on his abuse claims against Nicki. Now, his lawyers had an ironclad alibi for their client. He was not the one who pulled the trigger, and proving that he was involved in influencing someone else to do it was going to be a long shot. He threw his young girlfriend Colleen right under the bus, essentially saying that she came up with this plan to kill Nicki all on her own and he had nothing to do with it. She was just like threatened by her or something. I don't know. Well, the jury deliberated for about an hour before they reached a verdict. 41-year-old Timothy Amacher was guilty for aiding and abetting in the attempted murder of Nicki Lenway and aiding an offender after the fact. And it wasn't until the sentencing phase of the trial that Tim Amacher felt compelled to actually say anything on his own behalf. And when he did, oh my God, this guy, the worst.
It is no secret how broken this system is. The main message that I felt called here to say goes as this. For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. But with me, it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by any human court.
He used that time to blame everyone else. He said that Nicki was abusive, that he was the one who had suffered in this situation. The situation of his baby mama getting shot down in the street, that situation. Well, the judge was not having that shit.
It appears that you have been promoting this false narrative about Miss Ford for so long that you may actually believe it at this time.
So on January 30th, 2023, Tim Amacher was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the maximum allowed under Minnesota state law. Later, Tim's groomed girlfriend testified in court and she confessed. She admitted guilt. She took full responsibility and accepted all consequences for what she had done. And on March 27th, 2023, Colleen was sentenced to 16 and a half years for doing Tim's bidding. Tim Amacher will be eligible for parole as early as 2034, so we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. Nicki and Donovan Ford reclaimed their life together and got married on October 28th, 2022. They're still together and living peacefully in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area. And that is the story of Nicki Lenway Ford. Okay, a little survival story to kick off the holiday season. If you have a Crue Trime story that you want to recommend to me, look down in the description box because there is a link to a Google document. If you click it, it will take you to it, a form where you can fill out all of the dirty details. I would love to hear from you. If you want to know any of the makeup that I used in today's look, then look down in the description box because everything is linked as well. Thank you so much for hanging out today and for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then you should subscribe to this channel before you leave today. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week and you can follow me on all of the other socials as well. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! This makeup is not gonna look good today, but I was gonna say I'm doing my best. Am I? Absolute blah, 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 blah. A block. Ugh, got Emily, nope. Oh my God, what is in my eye? I don't know. Master, whatever his last name was. What is it? Amacher? Successful. Fuck. Amacher. Fuck.